Hello and welcome. YouTube assures me I'm live. Let's give it the usual 20-30 seconds and see if I actually am, and then get going. Oh, so many of you with us live in the chat. Hello to each and every one of you. If only I had the time to say hello individually. But we will chat later. We will chat at the end. So, let me know in the chat, how are you all doing with Affinity Publisher? You been following along? I certainly hope so. Today's probably going to be a bit of a different session in terms of we're starting a build. I'm not going to be able to finish it in an hour and a half, but we're going to build the most solid of foundations for a project that will, well, I don't want to spoil it, but it'll be on the way, let's say that. So, how are we doing? Are we live?
We're live.
Excellent. Good. Right, so hello and welcome. If you don't know me, why would you not know me? But if you don't know me, I'm Elaine Charles, and long-time computer trainer, podcast host, radio presenter, work with macOS, iOS and Windows and all types of apps, particularly concentrating on the Affinity apps, Designer, Publisher and Photo, Scrivener, do Microsoft Office and even Creative Cloud. But if you do know me, you'll know that I love my apps and I pretty much use everything. Right, we're broadcasting in 1080p. Hopefully you're receiving this in 1080p. But if not, do check the cog in the lower right hand side of your video. And while you're down there, give us a like, because it really makes a difference with YouTube. You could also subscribe and hit the notification bell, and that way you won't miss out on anything that we do, including updates to this project. So you'll want to see this taken to completion. Right, so build with me. Right, this session is not going to go in and explain every nuance of every feature. If you want feature details, I would suggest that you start with another video of mine, a link will be in the chat, just called Affinity Publisher. And that was put together the day after Affinity Publisher was released. And it's 3 hours long and it covers all of the features you could possibly want. What we're going to do today is actually use those features, but in a build with me environment. So not particularly explaining the details of them, just saying like, we'll use a section and I'll show you what I would do with the document rather than explain all about sections. Right, is it suitable for both platforms? Yes. Where there is a difference, I will let you know. The biggest difference between the two platforms, as far as I'm concerned, is the handling of colour in certain areas. So there's going to be one bit today where I'm looking at colours, and it's going to be less relevant to Windows users. But I'd follow along anyway. Some of it will be, it's just the nuances of where I'm going to put these files, it's going to be Mac based. But other than that, everything will work for Windows. So what are we doing? Because I've built this as a build with me. And I discussed it with Mike and said, like, I can't really say, you know, build a newsletter with me, build this with me. It's a project that we've discussed before, and we've decided to bite the bullet and go with it. But it's quite difficult to explain, so I'm going to give you a little bit of the history. Basically, it's a book. If you want the short, too long didn't read version, it's a book, right? But this is the history of it. Apple brought out an application called iBooks Author in 2012. It was a special event, an education event. I think they did it at a museum in New York. And they announced iBooks Author, and it was amazing. It was the most amazing application I think Apple have ever made. Within 10 days of its release, we had MacBytes the iBook. And what MacBytes the iBook was a full iBook. I think it had 12 chapters in it. But it was a full, wrapped up in a bundle with a bow on the top, episode of the podcast. So it was the world's first podcast in an iBook. And the reason that the iBook was so good for this was that you could put audio in it, video in it, presentations in it, quizzes, you name it. It was so interactive, it was amazing. It is actually still available if you want to have a look at it. But obviously, it's getting a little bit long in the tooth, isn't it? Because it's 9 years old this year. So it's time, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, updating it would be great. It would be great fun. But the problem is the iBook part of iBook, because iBooks Author was retired in the middle of last year. So it's going to become MacBytes the book. Whole different business. And it's going to be with you coming December 2021. So it's not going to be complete today. Obviously, it's going to be a 6-month project. But this is the start of it. So you've got plenty of time to save up to make a purchase, haven't you? Right, we will do a Q&A at the end, but do put your questions in the chat. If you can remember to put a Q at the beginning, that would be fantastic. But if not, I'm sure Mike will find it anyway, won't you?
Yep.
Yeah, eagle-eyed.
We have one already.
Oh, do we? Shall we answer it? Or is it a later toy?
It's from D. I wonder how Elaine made that Mike Bites book graphic.
Oh, there's a demo. There's a funny story with that. You mean this one? That was actually quite amazing. Back in the day, it would have been 2012, so it was done in Photoshop. I then put that in Keynote. And I don't know if you're aware, but you can take a Photoshop file and just drag and drop it into Keynote. You don't need to make a PNG or a JPEG or anything else either. Just drag and drop the PDF, the PSD. So I came to it last night and I thought, Keynote, just drag and drop the file out. So I drag and dropped the Photoshop file out. Try to open Photoshop with it. Photoshop now won't open. I don't know why. I did manage to get it open in Affinity Photo and work with it in there. But if you want to know how I did that, no problem at all. I can show you that, just not today. So Mike will make a note of that and it will be coming up shortly. So as I say, we will do a full Q&A at the end. But do put your questions in as we go. So the very, very, very first thing you need to think about before you even touch the computer, grab a piece of paper and a pen and make a flat plan. A flat plan tends to be for shorter documents, but it doesn't make a difference, and I would do it for a book anyway. What a flat plan is, as you can see, the first bit has a cross through it because you always start on the right, and the last one has a cross through it because, however many pages, you always tend to finish on the left. The middle in there, you start drawing over. So page 1 would be the cover. 2 would probably be blank. 3 would be something like a preface. 4 would probably be blank unless the preface goes over more than one page. 5, table of contents, and so forth. Now, it's particularly useful if it's like a shorter form, like a magazine, and you've got adverts in it, or you have a centre spread, because you can see 14 and 15 are the centre spread. So flat planning is incredibly useful, even if it is something as big as a book. So that's your very, very first port of call. That was made in Keynote, and now it's in PowerPoint. It's just shapes. So one thing you could use, you don't need anything fancy to do this. If you've got something like GoodNotes, fantastic. Then you can actually hand draw on the top of it. Or Notability or anything like that. Anything that you can open a PDF and draw on it would be just as good. Or you could do it the old-fashioned way and print it out and handwrite it. I actually do have a flat plan from a short form document that I made in November 2019. And I think from memory there was about 16 pages. And it was a highly designed brochure for an event. And what I actually did with it, so Mike could visualise it, was make a 3D flat plan. And a 3D flat plan is just get some pages, and in my case it was an A5 document, get some A4 pages, fold them in half, so I had 16 pages, and I just wrote on them what they were, and then I handed that to Mike, and he could then visualise it and say, could we put that on another page? But if you're designing it, you'll probably get away with a virtual flat plan rather than a real one. But either way, start knowing where you're going. The next stage is the asset collection. Because there's nothing worse than thinking that the starting point of all this is Affinity Publisher. You'll open Affinity Publisher and start working. And then it'll be like, where's that graphic? Where's that font? What colour is that? And it will interrupt the flow of creating it. So if you do the asset collection first, then you can just motor on once you get into Affinity Publisher. So I will head off and we will look at, where we go? There we go. We'll get Affinity Publisher. No, in fact, before we go to Affinity Publisher, no, we won't do that, will we? What we'll do, I will show you the kind of asset collection that I'm actually talking about. So here is the Finder window. And I actually have a build with me data and I have some data in it. Okay, but that's not particularly that well organised. So what I'll do in there, this started life as project 13. So I'm going to make it project 13 and then I'm going to start organising everything. So what I mean when I say a project folder, which is what this one's going to be, is what do you need in here? Well, one thing is the fonts. Now, obviously, your fonts are probably installed on the system. They're installed on the system that you're working with, maybe, but you may need some extras. You could leave them there. And maybe if you back up your entire system, you'll be able to get to them. But if you want to use another machine, it's so handy to have the fonts folder in your project assets with the fonts in that you are using. Future you will thank previous you. So if you're on a Mac to do that, you will need to go to your library. So I'm using Go, I'm holding the Option key down and I'm going to the library folder. We will be revisiting this very shortly. But at the moment we have in here fonts. And these fonts are not all of the system fonts. These fonts are the extra fonts that I have installed. Some of you, if you're following along with MacBytes, will recognise some of these fonts. And that's a font we use on MacBytes. A lot of the comic ones we use on MacBytes. We've used that on a MacBytes. We've used that on a MacBytes. So these are my fonts. They're not particularly the fonts that I would use in here, but these are my fonts. The most important one is the brand font, which is Myriad. So that's what Myriad looks like. Now you can see there's a myriad of Myriad fonts. See what I did there? So these are all my Myriad fonts. I don't want to take them out of this folder, but I do want to make sure, in essence what I'm doing is making my project portable, that I could use it on another machine. So I'm going to hold down the Option key and drag those fonts into my project 13 folder. And from there I'm going to take them and I'm going to put them in the fonts folder. And now I've got a copy if I need to use that anywhere else. What I tend to do is sometimes in here I've got fonts installed like these. And these are used on the MacBytes posters. It was called Come to Mummy, and that's like an Egyptian font. So what I do is just grab the entire lot and back them up, because these are the fonts that I would use in MacBytes. So what I'm going to do is the same thing again. It's going to prompt me that I've got some in there already, but it's done it. So I've now got all of the fonts. I'm not going to lose anything. Any font that I've got installed at the moment is now in there. And some of these I would actually use in the project. So I might want a really weird font. So I'm not just going to add the standard fonts. I'm going to actually add the fonts that I use on the posters and everything. So I've got everything that I could possibly need. Obviously, the best place to put your project folder is somewhere in a cloud. So in my case, it's in projects, it's today's session, the build with me data, and I've obviously got project 13. And within there, I'm going to put all of this lot in the fonts folder. So somewhere in there, there's a fonts folder. Where have you disappeared to? So many fonts. Good grief, 400 and odd. I did not know I had that many. Right, so let's put those in there. And it's prompting me to overwrite the others, so I've sorted that out. These ones are the ones I already had in there, so these ones are duplicates, so I'm going to get rid of those. So we've got the fonts. That's a very good start. Right, the next thing that you're going to want, which is really before you even start, is colours. Now, you've got a range of options when it comes to working with applications for colour, but the thing with them is, there just seems to be something about colour applications. They're there 1 minute and gone the next. So if you were to go to the App Store or anything, the Microsoft Store for Windows, if I put in colour, and I have to put a U, you'll see I've got Colour Picker, Colour Slurp. Yeah, these are going to give me the kind of applications we're talking about. So colour pickers. So we've got hundreds of them, but they seem to last 5 minutes and then they disappear. Now, colour is a session on its own, and I have done that, and Mike will put a link in for you. So when I say colours, what I'm going to show you is a practical application that's totally free. It doesn't cost anything to do this the way that I'm going to do it. So I need another folder for colours. Now, what colours am I going to need? Well, it's the brand colours. So if I just open up an application to show you, I wonder if we've got the actual file. Don't think we have. So let me go and find the file. It was on the desktop. It may no longer be on the desktop. But what I'm going to do is just open up Keynote. And the reason I'm opening Keynote is it's a standard application. So I'm going to make a new presentation, and I am just going to put some squares on it to show you how the colours actually work. So let's grab some squares, line the squares up, and show you how the colours work and what's going on here. Right, some of you may know this machine was new just before Christmas, and all of the colours that I had on my other machine, not here. And what I mean by that is, in here you've got a range of colours that you can pick, but you can also hook into the system palettes. And in addition to, in fact I have actually installed it, which was silly, but I'll sort that out. In here you've got this colour, the colours that we have in here, all of these. So we've got, there's a Scrivener palette that Scrivener installed. There's a Microsoft palette, and these actually have the names of the applications, which makes it so easy to use. You may have seen these before, but this whole thing is extensible, and every single thing that you see in here is available in Publisher. So if you get it right at system level on a Mac, but Windows is an entirely different business, but on a Mac, if you get it right at system level, your life will be made much easier. But it's trickier than it looks in here. So we've got some colours, and we can just select something and apply some colours. But these colours are predetermined colours, so the Apple colours ship with it. What do you do if you want a more personal colour, a customised colour? Well, at the bottom of this you have what I call the colour car parks, but basically it's the colour wells at the bottom. And I don't know if you know how this actually works. And if I stretch that up, you can get a whole range of these. We take that down. There is a limit. In fact, it doesn't look like there is much of a limit anymore, but there used to be a limit. So you could do that in there. The problem with this is, on my other machine, I had a whole range of these colours, but when I came over to this machine, brand new, nothing there. Really easy to use though. You just apply the colour by clicking it. So if this purple was something that you wanted, or more importantly, I wouldn't bother adding that purple down here. Why would I bother? It's there. But if that purple was an edited colour, so if we go and edit it slightly, so we do want purple, but we want it a little bit more purpley. So now we've edited it. We either capture the hex colour and put that somewhere and use that, or you can just drag this and put it in there. And now you can reuse that. Not just in here, in any application, including, obviously, Publisher. But the problem is this is specific to this machine. But the colour picker is where you actually start. So I've started there for a reason. Now what I'm going to do, let's get rid of that down there and show you how this thing actually works. So there's the file. There's my colours file. Silly me, put it in the right place. No wonder I couldn't find it. Right, so what I'm going to show you is how to configure this, and how to reconfigure this as well. Now you can only see it when you actually have an application visible. Right, so it will disappear. But in here I've got these two colours at the bottom, but what I don't have is all the colours that were perfect on my other computer. Also, people have said to me when I demonstrate this, how do you get rid of one? And logic would say, well, you right click and delete, only that doesn't work. You can move them around, but you can only move them around within the colours that you've defined. So I can swap these two over and I can add extra colours to it. So I can click on here and add an extra one. And now I can juggle the three of them. But what I can't do is just, delete them. So one of the problems with this method is you're stuck with them. So what I wanted to show you was how to manage this effectively. So I'm going to close this down because the application, we don't need to keep that because I've got another one. No, delete. I've got another file that I can demonstrate it in, but what I'm actually going to do here, just like we went into the fonts folder, you have a system folder for colours. And Affinity Publisher pulls the colours from there. So we just need to go and find it. So it's in the library, so go hold the Option key down on library, and we have colours. Now, this is the file, this plist file, is the one that is the colour car park. And you can see I've got 2 more of them. But I also have in here CLR files, which are colour definitions, and these are the ones that we're working with. So I'm going to take that one out of there and get rid of it. And what I'm going to do with these is also take those out of here completely. So all we should have is the 2 office palettes and Scrivener. So let's check that by opening up this colours file and see what's happened. So let's get the colour window up in here. Deleting the plist clears all of this at the bottom, which is fantastic. So that's the way to delete the stuff in here if you've been working with things and now it's one unholy mess. Delete the P file. The other thing that you can do in here is I just dragged these out. That is the default, but you'll see that I've got another plist file for Mohawk and another one for Serenity. Mohawk is the machine I'm working on. Serenity is the other machine I've been using for 3 years that's got all my colours in it. So if I copy that into the colours folder and I take the word Serenity off the end so it matches the name that it expects, and then go back and open Keynote and open that sample file and choose one of these and open this. These are all the colours that I had on my old computer. So if you haven't got to the point where you're actually making colour palettes, doing it the right way, you can still get to all of your stuff from another machine. Just showing you that before we start. Now the other thing is, in here you have a whole range of palettes. So you can see we've got WebSafe and Crayons, Developer and Apple. Now they come with the Mac, they are there automatically. But we have Scrivener that Scrivener installed and the 2 Office ones that I installed. You'll notice the MacBytes one has totally vanished because I moved it. So again, I'm going to close it because you need to close it. But in here, which is the colours folder within your library, I am going to copy back the MacBytes CLR, which is a colour palette. So putting that in there and then going back in. So you do have to restart the application because obviously it's reading it in. And choosing one of these, going in, back to your palette, where you have Apple, you now have MacBytes. And we're almost there, but there's a colour missing, and that is the blue colour. So we use grey, we use white, we use black. Obviously you could get those anywhere else, and that is our orange header colour. But we also have a midnight blue, and I'm not sure which blue it is. It could be that one, but I don't think so. So what I need to do is find the colour and add it to the palette, which would be a starting point, wouldn't it? So I actually have an application that I've demonstrated on MacBytes After Hours, which is Side Notes. And in there I have a MacBytes folder. And in there I have the colour for MacBytes After Hours Midnight Blue. Now that looks like a colour, doesn't it? Well, it is a colour. But I can actually select it. And if I copy it, and I come down into here, so let's get rid of that. So I come into here and I paste. Instead of copying some kind of weird thing, it actually copies the hex value, which is fantastic because it means I can take that hex value and I can go into here and paste it. And that is the midnight blue that I want. So hold on to that thought. I will show you that when we go into Publisher. But this is just how the colour palette works and how to reset it, how to add extra colours, basically how to manage the entire thing. Windows is slightly different, but we have got our colour palette in there. So we are on to the next step. Right, now we're going to go into Publisher and I've reset this so it's exactly the same as it would be on a clean install. So I have no assets at all. Now, we looked at assets last week, so I'm not going to go into the detail of it, but basically what we've got with assets is they are pre-configured groups of elements for you to work with. And I don't know why they don't give you anything to start with, but they don't. But what you can do is import assets from any of the other applications within the suite. So what I've got in here, it would be good if you went there automatically, but you're not playing ball. So we're in data, right. I have assets in here. So these are all the ones that I deleted. And I do have a MacBytes one, a standard MacBytes one, that came from Designer. So I'm going to open that and load those in to start with. But I also have a whole other range of assets that I'm going to need for this book that don't really fit with MacBytes. You could put them in here because you've got these general assets and after hours assets. So you've got two options at this point. The assets I'm talking about are 12 images that I'm going to need for the book. And these are the 12 images. These are when we do the review of the year, and we have 12 images. So the review of the year is going to go into the book, and I'm going to need these images. I could leave them where they are, which is an app called PicSave, but it makes sense to have them where I'm going to use them most, which will be in Designer. So the options I've got are to create a completely new set of assets, or I can create a subcategory in the MacBytes assets. So we'll do that in here. So in here, just like last week, we've got our new categories and all of the rest of it. This is at the top level that we have here. We also have down here the ability to edit all of these. So what I'm going to do up there is that's going to make a completely new one. That is not what we want. Let's go in here. Where have you disappeared to? New category, subcategory is what we want. So it creates it and it calls it assets at the bottom. Always does that. Always calls it assets. So in there I'm going to rename it, and that one is going to be review of the year. Because I've already got the graphics, it's fairly straightforward to get them in there. So my assets are over here. I can just drag and drop them in. So they are coming in there. You'll notice from the names that they are numbered as well as having the months on there. That's because I need to sort them properly, and not every application sorts properly. So I've got CM at the beginning, which means chapter marker. So these go in the actual podcast show as well. And then I've got a number that corresponds to the month. And luckily in here you can rearrange these. You just need to hold the Option key down to do it. So let's get the last two. So what I would do if I was taking the time, and I'm not going to take the time in this demonstration, is I would then rename these because I don't need them in here to have them like that. I can just call them January, February, March. But that is, it's just going to take too long to bother with in the demo. You can then fold these up when they're not in use. So if you're not working on the chapter that is the review of the year, then you can fold them all up. So we've done the fonts, we've done our colour palettes, we've done the assets. The next thing I've got is more artwork and stuff, but not necessarily artwork I would put in the assets. If I'm going to use a piece of artwork once, I'm not going to bother to put it in the assets. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be completely organised in terms of what my folder structure is going to look like. So if we go back to Project 13, we got the colours, we got the fonts. The colours are mainly for backup, and the fonts are mainly for backup. But what we're going to start putting in here now, what other things do we need? It's a good idea to export your assets, one, to use them on other machines, but also to back them up. So back in Publisher, there's our assets. Always a good idea to go into here and export them and put them in Project 13. So there's our Project 13 assets. It never chooses the name, wish it did, but it doesn't. And in here, I'm going to make the name of the assets with an underscore, and then the date, and then the time. And the reason I'm doing that is, obviously, as I start working through this, I'm going to update these assets. And I need to know when the last time they were backed up was. So if I know I've changed them in the last 2 days, and the date on there is a month ago, then I can create a new one. So I can create incremental backups of this. So we've got that backed up. Right, other things we're going to need. And this is just me going around and collecting stuff that we're going to need. So back in our Finder, what's missing? What haven't we got? Well, I'm going to have artwork of some description. So I'm going to create an artwork folder. In there, particularly for my project, I know I'm going to have posters for the show. So that's an asset. I'm going to have all the chapter markers. So I'll put those in. I don't know if I'm going to use them or not, but if I am, then they're there. And the other thing I'm going to put in here is branding materials. Again, some of them will be in that asset panel, some of them maybe not. Right, what else would be in my book, with it being a book? And that's going to be copy. I'm going to have text in there. Now, I know for a start, there's certain things that will be in there. So there's going to be all the stuff from MacBites the iBook, which was episode 64. I also know that I've got the MacBites story. So I'm going to put that in there as well. And all of this is happening outside Publisher. Now, what I mean about future you thanking you, it's all very well taking the text and putting it inside Publisher. But if changes are made and then it's like, did I change that? What was the original? If you've just left it in an inbox somewhere, it's going to be difficult to find. So keep the folder organised. So we've got pretty much all we need there, as long as we've got the assets in there. So at that point, you can finally get going. So File, New. We've taken the decision here that we're going for A4. At the moment, the distribution would probably be PDF, but I might as well have it for press ready just in case. So we are going for vertical portrait. Now, the default image placement policy for press ready is linked. But I might work with this on different machines, and I want to make sure that I don't have to drag around with me a sidecar folder full of contents. So it's easier for me at the beginning, at least, to work with them embedded. Down the line, I might need to export things and work linked, but at the moment, no, I wouldn't particularly do that. In terms of the number of pages, I've no idea. I have no idea how many pages will be in this book. But to get going with it and create the framework, which is what we're doing today, I need to have enough pages to create sections with. So I'm going to take that up to 12. 12 is a nice round number to be working with. Now, because it's a book, I am going to go for facing pages. I am going to arrange them horizontally. And I am going to start on the right. So I've not made any changes in there particularly. Now, in terms of the colour, it's saying CMYK because this is press ready. And if I'm going to create a PDF of that, might need to change it down the line. So in here, the colour's going to depend on what you want to do with it, but you can change it later. If it's going for print, we do have one that we use. It's a Fogra, one of the Fogras. Is it coated or uncoated? Can't remember. I think it was either 27 or 39, but one of these. But what I do with that, I left that as like the default one, and I went in and I changed it later. But let's say we're going for Fogra 39. Then you would set it in there. You can decide if the background is transparent or not. And then you need to set the margins and the bleed. The margins are the gap inside your document. So it's intended to be seen. It's the gap between your content and the physical edge of the page. And I find an inch, which is 25 millimeters, a little bit too much. So what I tend to do is change that. So I would have that at 2020, and I think I'll go for 20 for the top. So the left, the right and the top, and maybe a little bit more at the bottom. Having said that, because I know it's pretty much going to be a PDF, I will probably set it to 20. In fact, with it being a PDF, I might go even less than that. For this particular document, I'm thinking in terms of what the layout would need to look like. If it's just text on a page, then I think 20 is probably about right. But if I want something, I've got some particular design in mind for a page, I might then create an exception and use a different master for it. So I'll leave that as the default. Okay, so the bleed. The bleed is set to the default of 3mm. The bleed is not intended to be seen. The bleed is intended to be when something is cut for print. So it's printed and then it's cut, that you don't see any white edges on it. So a bleed of 3mm should be more than enough. I will show you what the bleed looks like when we get in there and do it. You can have a bleed and not worry about it because you can just turn it off. So you may as well have one from the beginning rather than go back and fiddle with it at the end. Right, so we have our document. So let's go and look at the pages, and there are our 12 pages. Now, the very first thing I do at this stage is set up a baseline grid. Now, we've looked at a baseline grid. I think it was the newsletter one that we did, but I'll show you why a baseline grid is important. So let's say I'm going to put some text on this page, and I can do that with text insert filler text. So we can just see some text in here. Right, looked at like that, it might look okay, although it's a bit scrunched up for my liking. But what I'm going to do so we can see it clearly is add a couple of columns. And then I'll add an image placeholder that we're going to wrap some stuff around. So we'll add that in there as well. And put that image there. Don't twang to the middle, want you twang to the column. There we go. Now, first thing, that's an image, but the wrap isn't set properly. So I'm going to open up the text wrap and tell it to run round it. So, you know, don't go through the image. So I'm going to place an image here at some point. Now, if I drag down a ruler and put it underneath the text, you can actually see in there that text looks pretty well lined up. And that's really what a baseline grid is for. So we still potentially have a problem. Although it looks lined up at the moment, it may not be lined up when we go in and start editing the text. So if I go in here and I just put a heading in there, and I then change the size of that because, you know, it's a heading, then if we look at this line that we've got here going across, now the text isn't lined up properly. It's also not spaced brilliantly either. One thing I see people do when it comes to spacing text is look at it and manually space it. So they would, in here, you have this 20.7, the paragraph leading over there, and you could change that. So if we up this, you know, that's a much clearer, easier to read layout. But the problem is, if you then change the size of the font, then that doesn't necessarily change with it. So, problems with that. Particularly if it looks like that. Now, what you can do with this, so let's get that back to normal. Let's undo that. Right, what you can do with this instead is use a baseline grid, and the baseline grid will help you immensely with the layout. Immensely with the layout. So, how do you do that? Well, you need to go into View and view the baseline grid manager. And people have said to me, "Oh, I don't fiddle with the baseline grid. Oh, it's too complicated." It's really not complicated. All you need to do is turn it on, and that gives you these blue lines in the background. If I just toggle that on and off with this out of the way so you can see it, it takes care of the layout. If we look now, everything lines up beautifully. With it off, no. With the baseline grid, you also specify the spacing, so you don't need to do it manually. Now, I like to make the grid spacing a multiple of 8 because it works really nicely. So the grid spacing is 14 at the moment, but I'm going to make that 16, which gives it a little bit more room to breathe. And with it being a multiple of 8, it just works nicely. The other issue that you've got with this, so as we zoom out, is it can look a bit liney. So this, where it says display threshold, is talking about it disappears at 70% and then reappears. So you could change this. Another way that you could work is you've got a nice colour there, but you could just dial back the intensity of it so it's not quite so in your face, or you could change the colour. So if you come from another application and then, you know, the baseline grid was pink in there, then all you need to do is to click on it and change the colour. Okay, so I'll have that a little bit less in your face. Right, so we've set the baseline grid up. Now, the content that I've put in here to do that with is irrelevant. I can always delete that later. But we have a baseline grid. Now, once you've got your baseline grid, the next thing to think about is styles, isn't it? When we looked at styles, I said there was something called the base style. And the base style is where to start with text styles. So in here at the moment, this is a completely new document. I've done nothing with it. But my text styles may look different to yours because I made a couple of changes in here. You can sort it by type, which I do have turned on, and that is the default. But this hierarchical thing is turned off. So yours will probably look like that. So it's a huge list in there with the paragraph styles at the top and the character styles at the bottom. But I have this hierarchy turned on because that means I can see it as a tree. So all of these styles are based on the base style, but you don't apply the base style. The base style is just a way of organising the styles. And this isn't my default font. This is not the font that I want. So instead of going in and changing it a million times in each of the styles, let's start off with the base style and edit the base style. So what have we got in here? And this is where it's defaulting to Arial. This is all of the style settings in the base style. So if there's no exceptions set to any of that, in the definitions of these substyles, the body, bullet, heading, etc., then it will look like the base style. So first thing I want to think about is what font do I want in here? Now Myriad might be great for the headings, but I'm thinking something cleaner like Avenir. So if I change that to Avenir and I go in here, you'll see this bit in here didn't change. That's because as we look across at the text styles, all of this text, there isn't actually any style applied. But if we did select it and we did make it a body style, straight away it inherits the Avenir from the base style. So the place to start is your base style. And then the other styles are exceptions to the base style. So for instance, this heading, that would need to be an exception to, well, it doesn't even need to be the body style, does it? It needs to be a heading style. But it would be nice if it took from it some of the information. So if I apply that, it's centered in the column, but it has taken the font of Avenir. I don't think I would particularly want a heading one that looked like that. I would probably want it much bigger, but the principle is there. What I said, if you remember, was the best way, just like the flat planning, your style planning would be better done outside Affinity Publisher. And how I did it was with a mind mapping app called MindNode. There we go. So I would put the document title in here, which is MacBites, the book, coming to a shop near you soon. And I'd start with my body styles, my heading styles, and just make sure that I've got all of the styles that I actually need. And I would do that in here. So I know I'm going to need quite a few headings, so I've got all my headings here. I'm also going to need headings that are included within the table of contents and headings that aren't. So I may need to duplicate some of these styles. I want them to look the same, but some of them I want in the table of contents and some I don't. So literally in here, how I would do that is go down there and put heading and table of contents, meaning I want that in the table of contents. So a heading one that is in the table of contents and a heading one that isn't. You could also carry on down that path in the same way with I'd want another heading one, but this time I want an inline heading one. So there's a difference between something that's like a chapter heading a big chapter heading, which is a real big heading 1 that I would want in the table of contents, and an inline heading. Because otherwise, if you think, well, I'll just have headings, I'll just have heading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right down to 50, you'll drive yourself mad. So the fewer headings you can actually have, but group them, the better it actually is. What that would look like is if you want heading 1 and heading 1 in the table of contents and heading 1 in line to all use the same font, but you want that different from the heading 2, 3s and 4s, then these would be children of this one rather than being children directly of the headings where you're making the changes in there. And that's why a mind map is perfect for sorting out the mess, because you can visualize it before you create the styles. It's much more difficult, so we'll save that and come out. It's much more difficult in here. You can visualize it, which is why I have the hierarchy turned on. So we can see that if we open body, all of these are based on body, but you're scrolling up and down and it's just not quite as visual. So that's why I do it first, and then I go and create the styles in here. But that's a good start, and in a nice inline heading like that, that'll work nicely. We are going to need to revisit styles, obviously, and create some. But where I want to get to today is the fact that we've got an entire framework built that we can then start putting content into. So in here, the next thing, all I've got here, so I can actually delete this. This was just to show you why a baseline grid was a really good idea. So let's get rid of all of the content, including that. This is page 1. This is going to be the cover page. So that's going to be our front cover. I do tend, as I'm working, to start putting text on it so it's easily identifiable. So I would potentially put something like that at the top, get rid of the 3 columns. It does remember that the last time we used it, it had 3 columns, but we don't want that now. And this one is going to be the front cover. So I would literally just put this on for reference. So I can, and I'm going to make that really quite big, offensively big. And the reason for that is so I can see it on the thumbnail. Purely so I can see it on the thumbnail and know instantly what that is. Now, what would the next bit be in the document? And the answer to that is probably the preface, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe the front matter, actually. Yeah, I probably need the front matter. So I don't want that on that side of the page. I want that over there. So let's put that there. And this is going to be the front matter. Then I would probably have the preface. So down into this bit here and put the preface on it. Come on. Right. And that's, can you see now why I do that? So we've got huge text that we can actually see. Once I've got the preface, the next bit after that, so let's put that there, is going to be the table of contents. So I'm going to leave myself some space for the table of contents. All right, that's not going to work very well, is it? So I will take that down a bit because I'm not concerned at the minute, dear me, as what this particularly looks like. I will deal with, in fact, this isn't even content that I would be using at any other point. It'll probably just get deleted. So all I'm concerned about is that it's big enough that I can actually see it. And you know, maybe I would be better at this and actually put some carriage returns in, get rid of it. There we go. That will do. I'm not bothered about formatting it correctly or anything like that. I just want a quick visual down here of what's what. Now, I would expect the table of contents to go over 1 page. We have been going with the show 14 years. So I'm going to leave this one blank because that's going to have content as and when. And then I'm going to come onto here. Now I can see at this point I do not have enough pages. So I'm going to add some more pages. We've got 12 at the moment. So if I add another 12, then we're going to have enough for content. So table of contents is going to take at least 2 pages, I would expect. Right, what's my next thing from that? Probably an introduction. Probably an introduction. Actually, maybe I'd put the preface after the table of contents. Tell you what, we'll just go with an introduction. Don't fiddle. Let's just go with an introduction. So who and what is MacBytes? Right, there we go. And finally, down here is going to be chapter 1. At last. Right, so that's chapter 1. Now, you may not need to do this if you've done your flat plan. But once I've got my flat plan, I do like to come in here and visualise it in here. Obviously, I'm going to need chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, but I don't know how many pages they're going to have. So it's literally just like a bit of a layout. But working backwards, this obviously is going to be the back cover. So I've got my front cover and I'm going to have my back cover. The next thing backwards I'm going to have in here is an index to the contents. And again, that index is going to be more than one page. So I'll just take it back one more page and move that over to here and put index. Now, all that's done is lay out the document, but it'll be a big help to me because I can visualize it on the thumbnails. But it's not done anything clever in terms of, obviously I'm going to need some page numbers on here, which means we're going to need some master pages. So I'm going to create, we've already got one master page, so just for demonstration purposes I'm going to show you why sections are so important. So in here I need to have some page numbers. So I'm going to get a little text block here. Should we have them in the middle? Why not have them in the middle there? Right, so I don't think I need to say what page it actually is, but I could put a little dash and then in my text fields in here, where's my text fields? Where have you disappeared to? Insert fields, page number. Down here, it's putting in a code. So that hash there is the code for a page number. So I'm just going to finish that off with another dash and we have a page number. So what I'll do with that, I think that was just about centered, but I'm not sure. It's quite tiny. There we go, that's centered. I'm going to copy it and put it on the other side. And the red lines and the green lines are telling you when that is lined up. So let's grab it. It's lined up over there. We're nowhere near the centre. And now we are. And I think that's spot on. So we put some page numbers on. This is the default master. Obviously, we will be creating more master pages. But I've done this purely to show you that this, being the default master, is applied to all of the pages. So we have page 1 and 2 and 3, etc. But the problem is they're all running on, and actually page 1 is probably going to be down here, isn't it? Or maybe the introduction, and that's page 13 at the moment. So to fix that, that's the reason that we create sections. So in your document we have menu, we have the section manager. So let's go into the section manager. At the moment there is one section in the document and 24 pages, everything is just numbered 1 through to 24. So I need to create different sections, and this is another reason why it's useful to go through and do all of that first, because it means the front cover is going to be separate from this bit here. So I want this to be a new section. So the front cover wouldn't have a page number at all, obviously. But the front matter probably wouldn't have page numbers either. You wouldn't physically see the page numbers, but you would as you move through it. So I need a new section. So in the section manager, I hit the new section button and I get section 2. This time, because this was selected, it split the document in half. We have page 1 on its own, being section 1, and section 2 runs from pages 2 to 24. Section 1 is the front cover, so I can actually give that a name and call it front cover. The numbering style doesn't matter. Starting at page 1, that's fine. What that does is put the name of it, in that little space there. So if we look at in here, it's blank. But as soon as you actually put that in the section name, it will ripple through. So the section name for this is the front matter. and then that will also appear in there. It doesn't matter what I choose in here for the numbering style because I'll probably just turn it off. Then we have the preface. So making sure you're on the page, new section, and this one is the preface. And all I would then do is go through this document doing that. Now, the interesting one is going to be this table of contents here, because there is an option that we've not changed on these sections. So if we look at the front matter, it's saying starting on page 2. And the preface is starting on page 4. But we don't intend to use the numbers, so it really is totally irrelevant. You could reset it if you want, just in case you ever do want to use numbers. In which case, we take that down to 1. No, restart the numbering, that's what we want. Restart the numbering at 1. And in this one, we want to restart the numbering at 1 again. Okay, the changes up here, if you're changing this, is where you're actually changing where that starts. So no, we don't want to change that. Right, table of contents. So this one here. This one needs to start, so we'll add it. So this one's going to be our table of contents. And we will put table of contents in there. Unless it's too long, which it's not, that's rather good. Now, is that right or not? No, it's not. Because we had the whole thing selected and it says the section starts on page 6. Is that a calamity? It is if the table of contents needs to be the first page. And instead of it being a numbering style of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we probably want it to be the Roman numerals in lowercase. Which means this page here, we can actually see it down there. We would restart the numbering and we'd restart it from 1. But it's still not right, because the section's starting on page 6, which is on the left. So this is a time that we would need to change that to 7. And I know that this now says 3, but that's because we've not turned it off yet. But this is correct. This has got a little eye on it. And if we move on to these, we should have in here 2 and 3 for the table of contents, which is good. Right, then we move on to introduction. Now, introduction is probably an introduction to MacBites, and this really does need to be page 1. So I'll add another section, and we will call it introduction. That's what it is. And we need it to start on page 1 again. But again, we need to look at it and see, is it actually correct? So where are we here? Introduction, restart numbering at 1. Starting on page 8. Well, that's not right, is it? Because this introduction is 12. So that has gone hideously wrong. So let's take that up to 12. But it's not even 12. It's the odd number. So the number 1 is on the right-hand side. So take that up to 13. Okay. Then we're on to chapter 1. And it's just a case of rinse and repeat. So I'll make a new section. I'm getting that down here. You can make this bigger, helpfully. This one's actually going to be the start of the book, so this one's going to be chapter 1. And we want this to start on what page? And it would be 15. And we do want potentially to start the renumbering, or maybe not. It depends whether we include the introduction as part of the book, and I think we will. So I don't think I would restart that one on that page. Then that would carry on until we get to the index. And at the index, we're going to want to have that different as well, potentially. Now, do we or don't we? We don't know at the moment. Simple as that. We don't know. Most indexes do tend to carry on. So they're like numbered as part of the book. But I may want to have it displayed slightly differently. So there's no harm in actually putting that in as a section as well. So go down to there. That's going to be the index. Where do we want it to start? Well, it's saying page 9 over here. So don't look at the page numbers. You'll get spatially confused. Look at the page numbers underneath. And it needs to start at page 21. I'm not going to restart the numbering there. That's just going to ripple through. But because it's a separate section, I can format it in different ways if I want to. And the last thing is going to be the back cover, which I will create a section for, but you know, it's a bit overkill, to be honest. It's a bit overkill. So let's select that and go into here and make a new section for the back cover. At least we've done the whole lot then, haven't we? And that one is going to start on page 24, which is correct. Don't need to start the renumbering or anything like that because we're not renumbering it. But there we go. So we've done all of the sections. That will make your life way easier in the future. And it means it's taken care of the page numbering at a really early stage. A really early stage. Now, for something like the front cover and the back cover and the front matter, we don't necessarily need the page numbers showing all the time. In fact, this front matter one isn't even right, is it? No, it starts on page 3. So you can now see the front cover has gone to 1 and 2. So you can retrospectively sort this out, luckily. Did we do it right with the preface? We did. I do believe we did. Or did we? Preface. Starts on page 4. No, it doesn't. It starts on 5. So let's make sure that all of these are correct. And that one should be starting on 7. And it is. So we're right from that point on. So we've got all of those sorted out. Probably a very good time to save the file. Let's put this in the data folder. Right, MacBytes, the book. You are witness to the first saving of the file. Okay. So we've got that structure in there. Next thing we need to think about is master pages, but I'm only going to do one at the moment, which is we've got this master A, which is the default, and it has page numbers on it. But we need one that doesn't have the page numbers on it. So we're going to create a new master. And this one we can actually say no page numbers. We want it facing. So it's set to facing. We want everything else to match. That's absolutely fine. You can change the margins if you want to. But for these purposes, we don't particularly need to. So I'll create that second master. And this one, we don't particularly at the moment need anything on it. But anywhere that we don't want a page number, like the front cover, if we drag and drop that on, it will disappear. So all of these odd pages where we don't want anything shown, we drag the no page number on, which makes it look like that. So there is a page number on the right, but not on the left. Obviously, we will be using master pages for layouts down the line. But the good part of this is by just setting up those sections, as we look at our sections in here, table of contents is numbered properly, and the beginning of the book, which is the introduction, is actually page 1. All of these are numbered just in case they're needed, and we don't have to do a thing. So master pages, your friend. Right, then we're going to need some content, aren't we? Luckily, I've got some content. Now, I'm just going to take an aside in terms of where the content's coming from. So we've created this lovely, lovely structure here for the project. But if we go up a level, we've got lots of stuff in here. So in here is the show art. So that needs to go in there. There's a document with copy in. That's got to go in there. And the reason that I'm doing this and sorting it out is future you will thank you. So this is copy, so it needs to go in the copy folder. The show art, we actually said assets and we said posters. So if I look at this, that's exactly what they are, but I've called it show art. So we'll put them in there and we'll lose posters. We'll call it show art. So just having this organised structure, if it's like, where's the show art for 56? You just follow the folder structure down and you will find it, because the show art for 56 is incredibly important. So let's go get the show art for 56. That one is 10 years ago this year, and it was the week that Steve Jobs died. So 56, most important. So in essence, what I've got here is all of the MacBytes stuff. Let's go down to these, which I may want to make reference to in the document. I could even use these and create an index to the shows with a data merge. So all of these are there in a nice, organised, orderly manner. Right, one thing I didn't show when we looked at images, which was a gross oversight. Right, let's go get a page. Let's say in chapter 1, we're talking about show 1. I am going to grab this, and it's wrapping. So I could have, at first, add one of these, which is a placeholder, image placeholder. And let's move that out of the way at the minute and put some text in as well. So we'll use that placeholder text again. And let's say this time, insert filler text, and it's wrapping nicely and working well with the baseline grid. This time, what I want to do with this, we'll put it in 2 columns as well, I think. And I very quickly showed in here, I think I did show you how to size it, which was over here, the size. The posters are a ratio of 16:9. So if it was 160 millimetres wide, it would be 90 millimetres tall. That's how to set it, although the size might be wrong. But once you've set it, if you put the lock on, you can scale that and it will retain that. And I want that somewhere over here, but it doesn't actually need to be that big. So let's say I'm going to put it like that with the artwork in the middle, like that. So I didn't show with the images that if I put an image in there, showed you placing images, so we can go and do that. Pick a number, Mike.
7.
I'm not sure if 7 had artwork. You can have 8. What's 8? Oh, 8 was the flight of the Navigator. This was Netscape Navigator in the day. So I'm going to drag that image on, and you can see it, but the text is not wrapping around it. But with it selected, you open up the text wrap panel, and you have a lot of options in here. First of all, you can have the text totally jump it, which will mean you don't get text on the left and right of that, which actually looks quite nice. But you also in here, and that is behind it, so let me go grab it. It would make much more sense to have it above where I can actually see it. Your other option is to square wrap the text around it both sides. You can go really tight on it, so if it's a particular shape, so maybe a circular image, you could do that. You could put the text on the inside, which you don't particularly want, and there's an edge option. So I think the one that works reasonably well is that one. You also, though, have the option here, it's saying both sides, but if this was slightly to the side, you see what happens. The text disappears because there's no particular room for it. But this one moves it to the largest size. So I'm going to leave it like this. I'm going to leave it square, and I'm going to put this in the middle. Actually, I've just moved it. I've moved the image inside the frame, not the actual frame. So let's move the entire frame. But it looks okay on the left, but on the right, that text is a little bit tight to it. But down at the bottom, you've got distance from the text. So I don't really want to move it on the left, but it's a bit tight on the right. So if I up the distance, it moves the text away just on one side. If you want like much more white space around it, you can link these together and change them. We can change them all independently, but just make a much bigger gap. But that looks okay to me. So that was one thing that we didn't look at when we looked at wrapping images. Let's move on to the next thing. What else have we got? Oh, another thing with images. Oh no, we'll come on to that. We'll come on to that. Right, what else have we got that we can do with this? Have we got any pressing questions at the moment?
We've got some.
And have you sorted that out? Mike?
Yes.
Right. We've got some. Right, okay then, we'll do them at the end. We'll do them at the end. Right, so in here, what else do I need to think about? We are going to have certain things in here. So style-wise, I'm going to need to think about styles before I go much further. But in terms of the content in my file, where's chapter 1 gone? Right, we've got filler text in here at the moment. But we do actually, depending on what chapter 1 actually is, we actually have some text, which should be in my entire folder structure, which we've just seen. So it should be there, ready to import. So we have copy. Now, because this came from the iBook was amazing. It was just amazing. In terms of the file formats that it supported. So back at this level, I have MacBytes the iBook. And I'm sure I had that's an Affinity document, which is this one. Oh, where's the original? Or did I put it in here? There it is. This is an IBA file. An IBA file being an iBooks author file. So just in case you've never seen iBooks author and you have no idea what we're working with, And these document warnings are because they've deprecated it. But this is what an iBook looked like, and it was so fabulous. Imagine a book that you open and the first thing you see is a video welcoming you to it, or some introduction here. So you can see this was announced on the 19th of January and this was the 2nd of February. How I managed to make a 180-page book in 10 days, I don't know. I tell you what, I couldn't do it now. I was clearly younger. So what we've got in here, there was an intro to it. You could generate your table of contents. There was an entire glossary if you wanted to add that to it. All for free, and it was easy to do. Each chapter had sections within it. So you had your introduction. This is a demo file, that's why it's got Lorem Ipsum on it. But this was section 1, and this was the first 4 years. You'll look at this handsome young man with his first iPhone. After a 7.5-hour wait in a queue. Don't ask, it was a long day. But in here, I've got this text, and this text I would probably be using. But why an iBook was so amazing was there was video in it, there was audio in it. You can see we've got text wrapping around here, and all this text. So future me, which is me now, was cursing previous me. Where is that text? Where's the source of that text? And as light dawned, I thought, oh, you didn't. And I thought, oh, yes, you did. I typed it straight in there. I know, that's shocking. So I had to extricate everything from in here. That's why we're doing the build with me, where we do it right from the start. Luckily for me, there's a trick. But if you're repurposing something from a previous lifetime, if it's in iBooks, good news, you can extricate it. You just need to know how. If not, do set some time aside where you extricate the content. Don't make that creation time, because your brain will be trying to do 2 different jobs and you'll be fraught. So luckily for me, there was a trick, but this was the most amazing application. I curse Apple every day for binning it, because if we make this new book, Mac Bytes the book, not Mac Bytes the iBook, how do we put audio in it? How do we put video in it? How do I put a presentation in it? It's going to be a PDF. It's like turning the clock back 20 years. What Apple want you to do is to take this book and open it up in Pages and do all this in there. The only problem is it doesn't support at least 60% of what iBooks Author does. It may get there in the end, but I can't wait. So I had to not take that path. But what I did do, so this is the iBook. What I'm going to do with it is create a little folder here and called a demo. And I am going to put a copy of this in there. So remember, if you're working with an iBook, this is what you can do. That is an iBook. But when you look at it, it's not a package that you can open and see inside of it, unfortunately. But if we change the extension to zip, now it's a zip file. And we can see inside it. That's my zip preview app that's showing me inside it. Awesome. So if I double click that, we get a folder with the name of the book. And all the stuff that previous me did not think of future me in terms of saving, I've got in here. So everything that I need, we've got in here. There's the front cover if I need to use that. We've got dedications. That's the studio circa 2011. Christmas 2011 that was. Whoa, it looks different now. that was the first metal 24-inch iMac. Oh, wow. Oh, and there's a Mac Mini nestling under there as well. These were all part of what was in there. That was an interactive image, which again we can't do now. Can't do interactive images. But luckily, everything that I needed is there. They're all page thumbnails. The stuff that was important to me was things like wrapping the images around that. And there was Mike with his shirt. Look at that. There we go. So all the things that I needed, including the actual Keynote file, which was when I did a demonstration of Pixelmator. Oh, it couldn't read it. That's not good. But it is a Keynote file and it should be able to. Okay, so everything I needed was in there, which was amazing. So always do that. Make sure you've got your stuff to work with. So I've extracted that. Okay. In here, so what I took from that was I created, so I did this in retrospect. You, of course, are going to be far more organised than past me was. So having extricated all of that, what I ended up with in here was this doc file, a .docx file, okay, which was the exact text, including the formatting, that was in the iBook. So I managed to take this text out of the iBook into Word and save it with the styles. So let's have a look at that in Word. And there it is. Now, in the styles pane over here, let's look at the styles. And the one thing that I do notice over there, we've got the standard Word styles. So if you said File New in Word, those are the styles that you would get. But in here we have other styles, and this isn't marked up as a heading or anything. So you've got a couple of options. You could go with that and just import it as it is, or you could create some styles in here. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not really worried about having the correct styles in here, because I'm happy to just take that text and import it and format it as we go. But if you're getting contributions from other people, so maybe you're putting a newsletter together, or somebody else is writing a chapter of the book, that'd be nice for me, and they don't have Publisher, and they need to use Word, then what you could do is set the styles up in here to match the styles in your Publisher file. And then when you import them, the styles will match up. So that's one thing you could do. You could create a Word file or a Word template that had the correct styles in it. But you don't actually need to. It depends. So if it's already arrived, and you're like, well, yeah, in retrospect, I would have done that, but you haven't, it's not fatal. So there's our Word file. So what I want to do in here, where we've currently got sample text, which we don't particularly need, so let's get rid of that, is do a place and place the content of that Word file. So in here, it is this docx file there, and open that up. Now, it has brought in with it, as I said, some of the formatting, but these are not styles. But rather than play around in Word, if it's a one-off like this is, I'm not going to bother creating the styles in Word. I'm going to bring them in here and the text will be formatted correctly. But what I would need to do is then create a style for it. So if that's going to be my inline header, in my styles here, it has no style at the moment. So it's Helvetica New as well. And it's also not centered or anything like that. And it looks pretty silly that it's wrapping around. So I would obviously need to do more layout work with this. But just to show you the principle, it's showing you that the style applied is normal plus. Now, just a minute, what's normal? If we look in the list, we do now have normal. Where did that come from? Because normal wasn't there before, and it was set to no style, no style. Normal has come from Word. So Word has actually created a style called normal. We don't need that for a start. We would probably want this to be an inline heading, probably coming off the body style. That would be one option. But however we do it, we're going to need to create a paragraph style that's not called normal 1. This one's going to be heading 1 inline. Now it says it's based on normal. This is the cascade of styles that we don't particularly want. And we certainly don't want it based on normal because we're going to delete normal. So in here, do you want it based on anything? And one option is to base it on the body style. The other is to base it on the base style. I think in here we could probably base it on the base style. We could then make changes to it. So as you look through here, we already have, it's pre-filled the differences. So it's pre-filled the fact that, okay, you want this heading in line, but you want it orange. That's correct. And in the font in here, it's giving it a font family. You are overriding the base style. You don't want to override the base style, though. So we'll make that no change. And that way, every time we change the base style, this will change in here. Now, let's have a look what's going on behind the scenes here. Now it's fitting. So 1, because we changed the font. But the other thing is in here, it says font weight, no change. But it was actually bold, I think. So we could make it bold because it's a heading. The other option is black, which is sometimes even thicker than that, but I'll leave it set to bold. So I want it bold and I want it 14 points, want it orange. But if I change the default font for the entire document in the base style, I want that reflecting in here. And OK. So at that point over here, I don't particularly need this normal style because I don't particularly want it. But it's applying to all of these because these were brought in from Word. So this is where you need to think carefully about what you're actually bringing in. Another option would be to copy all the text out of Word and put it into a text file and bring that in and manually format it. But be aware that when you bring a Word content in, it's going to bring the styles with it. If it was a new document, you're probably only juggling with normal. But if it was a file that somebody else had created that had 300 styles in it, all of that lot is going to come in and pollute your Affinity. Is there another way to do it? Well, you could just bring it into a blank Affinity document and start trying to do some kind of triage in there before you bring it into your final layout document. Most people think of the document they're working on as like the first place that they need to be, but it's not. You need the flat planning, you need the file organisation, you may need intermediate documents to keep this document clean. That you bring a Word document, in other words, when you get a Word document, don't make the first place you bring it in your final document. Because even if you delete all that content, the styles are then stuck there. And now you've got to triage the styles. So it may well be a much better bet to create a new Affinity Publisher file, just bring that in and have a look at what you've got before you bring it into here. Right, so we've got our document in there and we need to delete that normal style. So I'm going to right click on that and delete normal. It doesn't even seem to make that much difference. In fact, the truth of the matter is it doesn't. The text here that all had normal applied to it is still exactly the same. The difference is it now has no style at all. So the implication of that is if you now want to change the font, it's going to need some kind of style applied to it because it's now orphaned from its formatting. So that paragraph there and this paragraph here cannot be formatted automatically. If I change one, the other one will not update because there is no style applied to it. So if I go in here and make some changes, it's only happening to an individual paragraph. Whereas if we undo that and undo that and keep going until we get normal back, if I were to go in there and edit normal, so I'll make it so you can see it, and in the text fill in here, we start making changes. Why are you not changing? Oh, you are normal. Why are you not changing? That's interesting because normal is applied to that text and should be changing. Why are you not changing? You're telling me you're normal. That could be a Word issue. It should be. If I manually apply it, it changes it. That's interesting. So you'd have exactly the same problem. So I think I'll probably ignore that then. What I do for real is take it into another Affinity Publisher file and tidy it up separately. And then bring it in here and format it. And then, of course, once it's got a style, so if we were to apply that normal style, although it is already applied, so I don't know why we're doing it twice, and you then go in and change it. So let's edit normal and make it something else like that. Then they do change. That should automatically apply, but it doesn't seem to be doing so. Interesting. That's why I always take it into a separate file. Learnt my lesson by bringing a file into here that had like 100 pages and 90 styles with it, and then having to go through and manually sort it out. So sort it out in a separate file. That's a much better idea. So where are we going with this in the future? Well, just off the top of my head, I'm going to need a lot more master pages. I will have some standard master pages, for, like if I'm doing an outline of a particular show, I'll have a master page for the outline of a show. I'll also have a standard chapter look. I'll probably create some more like visual, something with more visual appeal in it. So I will have many more master pages for layouts. In terms of the content, not actually finalised yet, but everything that was in the iBook will get transferred across. But that was 4 years worth of MacBytes, and this is now 14 years worth of MacBytes. So we have some catching up to do. We also have like a newbie's guide to MacBytes, which is if you're new to MacBytes, if you've not been around since 2007, oh, you've no idea what you've been missing. So people ask questions like, what's this with the MacBytes teeth? Or what's this with the MacBytes thong? If you don't know about the MacBytes thong, you've not lived. So we thought we would put in the newbie's guide. So it'll be all like the FAQs, the questions that people ask. Also the stuff that we do with learning content. So there's going to be a lot in here. There'll be a guide to the crew, the shows, after hours shows, Marooned at MacBytes headquarters, the story behind that. We've got the behind the scenes stuff, the gear, what tech we've used across the years with the show, all of the lives that we've done. It's a big undertaking. So there will be some data merge in here as well. So what we thought was we will keep you up to date with this. So this is the initial build with me. You now have a framework to get going with a document with. But as you can see, that really is only the beginning. We've blocked out 6 months for this. We were over ambitious with the first one, I'll tell you. 10 days, it was unbelievable. But we've got so much more content now that we've blocked out 6 months for it. So we will keep you up to date with this as we progress. Moving forward, definitely, there's 2 big issues with this. One is the table of contents. We're not doing that by hand. So there is a way to create tables of contents, and that will be a completely separate demo down the line. The other thing, of course, at the other end of that is the index, which will be a totally separate demonstration down the line. It doesn't make sense at the moment to do that demo like next week because the content's not in there to index. But once we have enough content in there for a table of contents and to index, then those are the next 2 dedicated sessions. But if you let us know in the chat, let us know. Would you be interested in seeing how it's progressing? Updates, build with me updates as we go. And Kay says her copy will be in Scrivener. That is where ours will actually be. I'm not thinking it will be coming from Word. But to get it out of Scrivener, I'll probably take it out to a specialist template in Word and transfer it that way. But Scrivener, oh yes, Scrivener is where all of my content is at. I'll also be using Scrivener as a basis for research as well. So let's show you Scrivener and what the MacBytes thing looks like. This isn't the mail one. This is the actual content. It's a bit squashed on this screen, but this is what it actually looks like. So in here, we have everything. Got the index to the content. We have the inbox. We've got MacBytes management stuff. So ideas, bumped, admin, all the style guides. Then we've got the on diary. The on diary is stuff that we know is coming. So WWDC's in June. Anniversary of Steve Jobs' death. Steve Jobs' birthday. All of the stuff that you know is coming. I'm not sure in Front Matter what I put in there. Oh, I put the show art in there. So as I'm working, the show art gets put in here and it gets pulled through. So all of that is in there. It's in the Front Matter for a compile. Then we have the 2 big folders, which is the MacBytes folder and the archive. The MacBytes folder is all of the new stuff here. So this goes back to our very first show that we used Scrivener for. So we have a special for Jonathan, and then it was Bar Humbug, which was 79. And every show is in here. So if we look at the last show, or in fact, let's open the whole lot. Everything that we cover is in there. So this is where I'll be going to get some of that content. It's already in there, so I might as well repurpose it. The other thing we've got, because we only started using Scrivener on 79, we have this archive folder, which is all the stuff that we did before. and in PDF format. So we've got from 78 backwards, Where's Wilson? And it goes all the way back to Hello World, which was episode 1, where there was the 3 of us. So this was, the name was sorted. And as you can see, some of this was Mikey B, so excuse the language. But this was it. We introduced ourselves, and then that was what we talked about. That was like the show notes. So we can go all the way back to episode 1 for the information. Now, that's a PDF, so we're looking at like we'd have to copy and paste it out. But everything going all the way back, oh, I can assure you, future me is thanking 2007 me. A lot. What else do we have in here? Not much. We've got some templates. The Matt Bites mail, but I don't do the Matt Bites mail in here. I think that was a testing thing. But yes, Kay, exactly. Good idea. The other place that I could go for information is another Scrivener file, which is our email generator. And all of the emails we've ever sent are in there. So here's the email that you will have received. Oh, aren't I organised? All of these have gone. So what I do with these, see they're grey? That means they're in Notion and they're ready to go. All of those have been sent. So what I then do with them is change the label to sent. I change the status to sent. And we're good to go. Which means I've only got one more mail going out this week before I fold that up, and then we head off into next week. Those are all next week's mails. So what I've got in the archive is the mails going back to time in memoriam. So if there was something and I say to Mike, I think we sent it in a mail, then I have this archive to come to for it. So while I've demonstrated taking, one scrappy little Word file into Publisher, it could be something as comprehensive as this. It could come from anywhere. It really doesn't matter. Can you imagine that, as you were starting this project, if I had to go back to 2007 and find all of this stuff and start with a blank page, it would never happen, ever. But luckily, from day one, I was in charge of organising it. Mike was in charge of the website, and Mikey B was supposed to do the show notes. So we all had individual jobs. So one person was in charge of all of this information straight from the start, which is why it's so organised and available. What the funny story with that is, episode 1, I don't know if any of you can look at that and think where that came from, with the little icons at the top and the style of it. That is a PDF that came out of Google Wave. I loved Wave. It started life in Google Notebook. And what we had to do was every time we changed the way we did the show notes, we had to drag these behind us until in the end I said, you know what, I'm just going to make PDFs of them and call it done. But once we moved to Scrivener, we never went anywhere else. So in here we have as well Mac Bites episodes. Let's click on there and do the board. And if we make that a little bit smaller... where's the size of them? Card size. Let's make it a little bit smaller so we can do 2. Each one gets its poster art on it, and it's so good to look back at that. It is. It's so cool. Everything is in there. Absolutely everything. So, Kate, good idea. Yes, that's what I do. Okay. So, quick recap. Right. It's a real project. It will be available for you in December. So save up your pennies, ready for December. Did we have any in the chat, Mike? What was the thing with, shall we keep them up to date?
Yes.
Yay, was it a yes?
It was a 3 yeses.
Excellent. Okay, then we will do. We've covered everything you would need to do to get to the point to say that project is now ready for content. So our next step would be to create a project plan in terms of time. Where's my mouse gone mental again? This is not our full-time job, so we can't spend every waking second writing this book. So we'd have to allocate some time per week. And over the course of 6 months, we are going to need a project plan for that. So that's the next stage, to work out what's going in it and where it's coming from. And if we need to create any extra content. And some of the things like the table of contents, the index would definitely need to be done. But we would have the style set up, we would have the sections, we would have the whole layout done. We're ready to go. We have the actual file that will eventually, by December, turn into the finished product. So what we will do is sit down and work out what kind of time frame keep you updated with.
We now have 6 yeses.
Yay! Okay, so that was Mad May, because it's the 30th today and it's a day of rest tomorrow. Only somebody should tell my course that. We went live every Sunday and they are now all going to be available on demand. So today's will be available on demand. The 2 that we definitely have coming up at some point, but not with a date yet, is Table of Contents, which you've seen at least where that will go. We have a placeholder, so it's virtually done. And then how to create an index in Affinity Publisher, which is even more complicated. And again, they don't have a date, but it will come at some point. We started with the deep dive of data merge way back at the beginning of May, and that is available on demand as well. Followed by images, which you saw some working with today. So today was about consolidating the other weeks that we did in May. We've looked again at some styles, so if you want all of the details of styles, that is available on demand. And last week we worked magic with assets in Affinity Publisher, including in symbols, which aren't even in there, but we did it anyway. In March, we did the export persona from Designer. We did mastering blend modes in Affinity Photo. Most popular one yet, create creative tables in Affinity Publisher. And master pages, which would be incredibly helpful if you are creating your master pages and following along with the project.
Tracy wants to know what everyone's yesing to in the chat.
Just say yes, Tracy. And we also covered Bridge, which I am using Bridge for my assets at the moment, at least part of them. I am fingers crossed that one day we will see this mythical Affinity Digital Asset Manager. But I don't think it's imminently coming in. I think the next big project from them is probably going to be Publisher for iPad. Can't wait to get my hands on that. Oh, what if it's next week at WWDC? Oh, the excitement. We also managed to sneak in creating a newsletter in Affinity Publisher, which was last September, no, August it was. August last year. And that's available too. So all of those are available on demand at youtube.com/Elaine Giles. Now, if you subscribe and hit the notification bell, then you will get notified so you will not miss anything at all. And if you've got any queries or questions, get in touch with me. Probably best via the website, elainegiles.co.uk, and there's a contact form. Right, we love you guys. If you have enjoyed it, you have had anything interesting that you could repurpose, then give us a like. It really does make a difference. So in terms of keeping up to date with this project, make sure that you're subscribed to my newsletter. I will provide updates. Shall I make a commitment now, Mike?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, 6 months would only be if I did it monthly. 6 updates, wouldn't it? And that's not totally a lot. So how about I do it weekly? Should we have a yes for that as well? Mike's going to say yes now, because what he's thinking is, I'll be getting a mail out every week. But yeah, follow along with this project via the VIP mail, and I will keep you up to date. And we'll probably have a few more sessions as well. Okay, let's head off into the Q&A. So I need to see the questions, don't I? Let's do that. So that's in a totally different place. There it is. Yay, I think I've got the questions. Right, what have we got for questions? Okay, so we've got D's. Well, I explained that, but I appear to have broken Photoshop. So that was good, wasn't it? Naughty me. It was a smart object in Photoshop, and I do have the original file. So I could actually demonstrate that. So we've got that down as that. Is there a reason you always start on the right hand page, not on the left? Just purely that's how books tend to work. If you picked up a book and the chapter started on the left, you may not notice, but something in you would be, that's odd. They always start on the right, so I'm just going to stick with that, with it being a book. Right. Fonts, OTF versus TTF. TTF, True Type fonts, were quite old. The OpenType font came out much later, and it has support for more elements within the font. So if you had a choice, if you had a font and it was in 2 file types, you would probably be better with the OTF. But if you have nothing else, then the TTF is fine. It's not it's not like a poorer quality or anything like that. It's just in terms of the breadth of features that font can support. So when we looked at fonts, we looked at a particular font, I think it was called Thirsk. And it had all these extra characters in it and ligatures and all kinds of elements, swirls and things like that. And that was supported because the OTF format is kind of a wider format. So OTF if you've got a choice, TTF if you've not. And you know, I use fonts that don't even have punctuation. And you would not believe how difficult that is. This font does not have punctuation, it doesn't have numbers either. So I have to have a secondary font that's close enough just for the numbers and punctuation. It's a nightmare. I wish they'd make the right font, but that's what I use. Right, Renee says, I thought you could export the used fonts with the Affinity Publisher file. Why put the fonts in the project folder? Because at this stage, the fonts aren't in the Publisher file. We've not even started yet. We haven't got any text in there. We've not created, at that point, before we've even started the project, the fonts are not in the file, or referenced even in the file. Once you've got the file, by all means do it that way. But in my case, it was more the fact of I may want to work mobile on a laptop somewhere, and if I take the Affinity file with me and the fonts are in there, or I could export them to a folder and take them with me, I may well find that there's a font I want to use that isn't there because I haven't used it up to this point in the document. So what I'm thinking is that Egyptian font, the mummy font. If I want to actually use that font to explain what was in that show, and I haven't used it before, even if I export all the fonts from the project, that one's not going to be there. So on a weekly basis, I actually have Carbon Copy Cloner set to back up my fonts folder. That way, like the colour palettes, the colour wells at the bottom of the colour palette, it's a system thing you need to back up. But if you're not using that many fonts, they're fairly standard and you're happy to do it later, then no problem doing it that way. Where did I get that ruler again? What ruler was that? Was this the one I dragged down from the top of the screen?
Possibly.
Was it just the line across there?
I think so.
Okay, right. The rulers were showing, so these are at the top and at the side. And what I did to drag that down for layout was just click on the ruler and drag it down. Click on the side ruler and drag it in. So if you particularly want to make sure that something is lined up with a particular place, so if you want to visualise the centre of the page, that's the centre of the page there, and it twangs. So you get green on the vertical, and you get red on the horizontal when it's in the right place. So if you want to visualise the centre of it with 2 ruler points, that's what you do. Just point to the ruler and drag it down. Point to the ruler, drag it across. Didn't there used to be in Word a way to drag 2 from the side? The top corner?
Yeah,
I think we're getting ambitious there. But yes, that's what you do with it. Okay, so that one. Kay says, if I add more pages in a section, do I need to adjust the section manager so the ranges are correct? Right, let's go see that. So in here we have got our chapter, well, we've got our introduction, and then we're going straight into chapter 1. And over here we have our section manager. So that's good reason to name them. There's the introduction, which is starting on 13. It's only 13 and 14. So let's move that to the side. And don't disappear. All right, well, we go over here and put some pages in. So if I say insert 2 pages after page 15, now if it's after page 15, it's going to be in chapter 1, because that's what I'm clicked on. But if I'd clicked over here, so let's cancel that. If I was clicked on introduction and I wanted to add some pages to there, so let's do it with that selected. It's going to put in 2 pages after page 13. So click that, puts them in, and let's have a look what it's done up here. So the introduction is now 13 to 16. So it's automatically, oh, not now, seriously, crying out loud, an update to my scanner. Right, it automatically updates, And you can see that happening here. So as long as you put the pages in the right place, it will just push everything down, push everything up. So it should be absolutely fine. That's one of the reasons, once you're working with this, that I did take the time and put the titles in. Because otherwise you're like, what page am I on? So if we were looking for the introduction and it didn't say introduction, we'd have to be looking under here thinking, well, it's either 12 or it's 13. And you'd be squinting at this. So do take the time to put the names in. But yes, it will automatically update for you. Okay. Did I draw the navigator in Designer? I did, Carol. I did. What happened was we started sending... At the beginning of MacBites, we didn't have a mailing list. And eventually, when we got a mailing list, I said, the mail looks a bit bland if we just put text in it. So what I would do is throw in a little graphic. It wasn't a set size or anything like that. It was just something about the show. So in one of these shows, the EU had decided, this explains Brexit. The EU, I probably shouldn't say that word, should I? Or YouTube won't like it. The EU had decided that you couldn't have a powerful vacuum cleaner. What I mean is, they were bringing out vacuum cleaners that were like, 3,000 watts. And the EU decided, no, you couldn't have anything more than a certain level. And it was to do with saving the planet. So there was this story about tech and that cleaning tech, basically. So what I did was I got a graphic of a broom and it went in the email. And then the next one was, the show was called Blofeld's Cat and Dinner with George Clooney. And we had a picture of Blofeld and his cat. And then the next one, I think, was Motorway Madness. And then I said to Mike, I'm doing these graphics, they're going in the email, but what's the point? Because then they go to die, they're just in the email. So I said, what if we had a little bit of a poster for each show? And that's how they started. But that was around episode 70-something, 80-something. So we had all these previous shows that didn't have show art. So what I did was I put a project in place to go back and backfill them. So that Navigator one, Flight of the Navigator, was one where we were talking about Netscape Navigator. And I think we actually called the show Flight of the Navigator. So I thought that's what I need to draw. So yes, I did.
Do you want to briefly explain MacBites After Hours for somebody who's asking about it?
Yeah, that's fine. MacBites started as a podcast in 2007 and we, in 2010, extended it to covering MacBites, we call them MacBites Live, but they were Apple events and we would provide audio and video of the event and we would provide a chat room and we had a complete blast. 2010, that was great, but by the time we got to sort of 2017-18 time, the Apple events were like yawn fests. And everybody said, Apple's interfering, I'd just love to come and chat. And Apple's like ruining this because now I've seen these products and I don't want them. They're shocking. So we started joking around and saying we'd have to do a MacBites After Hours or a MacBites After Midnight. And it basically meant like a chat, with no Apple event. So in the autumn of 2018, we bought quite a bit of kit, didn't we? There was new kit for the studio. There was a new laptop for me. There was a new iPad. So I said, why don't we do this as a mass unboxing? So we said we're going to do this as a one-off. So come on Friday night, we're going to do MacBites After Hours. And it's a show on YouTube where there's demonstrations like you've seen today, unboxings, Mike does Excel. It's a community thing for about 3 hours on a Friday night. So we did it the first time and it was, do it again. So we did 2 shows. And then it was like, I said to Mike, we've got Notion, we could do more. We were organised now. So it started in the autumn, October 2018, and we are up to show 131 next Friday night at 9 o'clock UK time. So anybody who's been to a MacBites After Hours, why don't you describe what MacBites After Hours is? It's like today.
Kim has already done that.
Let me see that. Live learning, ask a lot of questions about everything. That's a good definition, that. Okay, right, let me have a look at this. Where am I up to? When Renee imports text from Word, which you have to do regularly, copy the text, shift Command V into Publisher. That's a good way to adapt the text to the style from Word to Publisher. Absolutely, whatever works for you. I need a predictable way to take content from multiple places. And the last thing I want to do is import something and then have orphaned styles. The way I do, well, I'll actually show you this when we've got a full chapter to import, but the way that I do it by taking it into a separate file, I think is probably the best way for me, but your way might be the best way for you. What I'd really like is something like InCopy. Adobe have Adobe InDesign, and they also have this companion application which is free called Adobe InCopy. And InCopy is just like a text editor, but it is savvy enough in relation to InDesign that the two are companions. So you put the text in InCopy and it's so clean when you take it into InDesign, and I would love that, but we're not there yet. We're not at that point yet. Most people seem to want to get text from Word and put it in that way. If I'm particularly concerned about the text, in terms of, oh good grief, there's a million styles, or even worse, it's manually formatted, and I don't need that because I've got the styles in Affinity, then I'll just copy and paste it out as text. And sometimes that's a better idea, because if I can get that into, I use two text editors, Sublime Text and BB Edit. BB Edit is fantastic at cleaning text up. So if you take the text in and you think, oh good grief, there's two spaces there, and they put two spaces after a full stop, it can tidy all of that up with one button. So sometimes I just take it in there, because even more significant to me, rather than the styles and the look of the text, is where there's like some errors in it. I have this every week with a particular job. The church newsletter drives me mad. I don't know. I think what's happening is the text there's coming from emails, which is broken after every line. And although it looks right, so the parish secretary sends it to me and it doesn't look bad. I'm looking at it thinking there's two spaces there. And when you delete one of the spaces, the rest of the text goes crazy. And you end up with like 12 spaces randomly in places throughout the document. So personally, take it into a text editor and make absolutely sure it's 100% clean. But whatever works for you. Nothing wrong with either way. Have I done a demo of Scrivener? Yes, I have. I have done an introduction to Scrivener 3. Are you on Windows or Mac, Carol? Remind me. I think you're on Mac, aren't you? But remind me. I did a demo of Scrivener 3 when it came out, so that would be 2017. So it'll be on the channel. Mike may find the link if we're lucky. It's on YouTube, so if you check... in fact, we got the list. I haven't actually put the link up, have I?
I've already suggested signing up to your VIP list.
Oh, that'll solve the problem.
Yes.
I'm thinking there is a playlist. There is an after hours playlist, which is macbytes.co.uk/after hours playlist, all one word. Or you can go to my channel and you should find the playlist listed there. Or you could search YouTube for after hours playlist, but you do get some weird stuff back with the word after hours. So probably best using the macbytes.co.uk/macbytes after hours playlist, or is it after hours playlist? One or the other. Michael, paste it in. He'll go and find it and paste it in. Carol is on a Mac Mini. Right. So the version of Scrivener that I demonstrated was version 3 when it came out for the Mac. Version 3 for Windows has only just come out. I think it was about 6 weeks ago. They are finally caught up. It took a lot longer than they thought. So I did that demonstration, Carol. And when the iPad version came out, I did a demonstration of that as well. So it's all on the channel to see. Scrivener is on our list to revisit because it's been a few years. So we will definitely sort that out as well. I did do a demo at some point, I think, about how we used it for the newsletters. It would have been on an after hours. But what I'll do with this, because this is like, I mean, it's a build with me and we've built it to the point that you can now put the content in. But obviously, moving forward, we've got 6 months of work to do with it. So we will have data merges where we're bringing the shows in. We will have manual imports. We will have import of formatted content. So what I can do, like I say, I'll do a weekly update of where we're at, you know, have written a chapter. Have written a paragraph is probably much more likely, but I'll do weekly updates in the VIP mail. And like you've said, yes, you want updates. What we can do is we can revisit it. So it'd be our Affinity Publisher build the MacBites iBook with me. So we could have a couple of sessions. Maybe we could do that once a month or something like that. So see where we're at, look at what the pain points were, what the problems were, what procedures I've put in place to make sure we don't have any pain points in the future, and all of that, if you like. Some of that would be Scrivener, because that is actually where the content is. So I tend to use Word as like a conduit for getting stuff out. So in my world, my Word document wouldn't have any of these horrible styles kicking around in it, because the Word file would be coming from Scrivener. So we could do that as a workflow, couldn't we? Scrivener to Affinity Publisher workflow. Put that down, Mike, before I forget that genius idea I've just had.
Scrivener to Affinity workflow.
Yes. Oh, lovely comments. Mike's put the lovely comments in. So Peter and Annie say, more top tips from the Queen of the Screen. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that. And then you talk about coated and glossy pages. Yeah, we had a particular one, and I know it was Fogra, and we did have it coated. So it was coated Fogra, I just can't remember the number. So we use this, well, they're not really online, are they? What are they? They're a real printing company, but we found them online. So we upload stuff to them, and it comes back fabulous. What we did do in After Hours in relation to that was we did an unboxing of some brochures that we'd done. I think we did it twice. I did a brochure for the Munich Memorial, which is in February. So that show would have been late January at some point. Not this year, probably last year. And the other one we did was in November 2019. And what we unboxed there was a box of printing that had arrived that was the brochure for the Ladies' Night that we were organising. Like I say, I think it had 24 pages, something like that. And I talked you through that project as well.
Scrivener to Affinity workflow, best idea ever.
Okay. So thank you for that, Peter. Right, David King says, I've arrived late, just want to say, it's really helpful seeing this done in terms of a real project and process. Thank you. That was the idea. I hoped, because we've done the features, and sometimes when you're looking at a feature in isolation from all of the other features, you go feature blind. So I wanted to take this up to the point that file is now, I mean, it's very embryonic, but that file is the file that will turn into this finished book that you will be able to put in your Christmas stocking at Christmas. So I've made that commitment now. It's got to happen. So thank you for that, David. Oh, Renee says I could already put this episode down as the most useful episode ever. At Elaine Giles' Affinity Queen. Thank you, Renee. Kay says it's super helpful and builds well on the past sessions. Well, that was the idea. So hopefully Mike was putting those links in to the previous sessions as we were going, so you could go back and refer to them. So I didn't intend today to detail the how and why of stuff. It was just like, so the assets last week, yeah, we're going to import those this week. Then I'm going to create a subsection. Then I'm going to put more assets in, and I can rename the assets and all of that. So that was the plan. So I'm glad that was useful. Oh, Renee replies to that. It's an addition and show exactly what that you encounter every day. You dare say you already know quite a bit. Oh, Renee, you know I've got dirty hacks. You know I have. Oh, and David, yes, updates. David wants updates, so okay. Oh, I've got, yes, I need updates. And Peter says, I'm in awe. Oh, good. Which bit was that? Which particular bit was that?
All of it, I think.
Oh, excellent. Okay, and we've got lots of stuff here about which CMYK profile to use. My guiding position on that is, ask the printer. The printer will tell you what they want, which is how come we got this Fogra thing.
That's what Peter says.
There is a standard one, which at the beginning, the problem with the printers is, the second you mention Affinity Publisher, don't. Because they're like, no, don't support that's in design. Look, a CMYK profile is a CMYK profile. Just tell me which one you want. But if you just go in and say, yeah, InDesign, what profile should I use? Then they'll just tell you. Sometimes it's on the website, but sometimes it tends to be hidden in 13 pages of garbage about InDesign. And you're like, no, just give me the basics. Tell me the absolute basics. Because you're probably going to provide it as a PDF anyway. But they just don't seem to want to say, this is it, it's that. But eventually you'll prize it out of them. So that's what we did. So I started with a generic CMYK and then I changed it towards the end, once we knew exactly what it was. Okay. Oh, Peter wants all of it. So all of it was awesome. Good, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Oh, Kim says Queen of the Dirty Hack. I know you love your dirty hacks. And Tracy's caught up just in time to say goodbye. Which you've done before, Tracy, but I'm impressed. Because some of that you're watching at 2 times, which I am impressed. Although when I play some videos, and particularly audiobooks, put an audiobook on last night in the middle of the night after by request. And I'm thinking the computer's gone again. No, I'd got it playing at 1 speed, hadn't I? So once it was at 2.8, I was quite happy. So Tracy does amazingly well, because sometimes I'm reading subtitles at 2.8 as well. It's bad news. Some printers are a bit sniffy about non-industry standard packages. That's the problem, and I've never quite, with printers, you're like, that's like the point of no return. And it's like, it's got to be spot on. But what our printer does is they check it and they then send back like a virtual proof that we can actually say, hang on a minute, you know, I've spelt Affinity wrong, I put 4 F's in it. So they do give you that option before they press the print button, thankfully. We'd never actually have to make a change, have we?
No.
No, they've been very, very good. But it's just the second, you know, that they just assume it's InDesign, and the second you say it's not, I think they're concerned that they'll do a print run and it won't work, and you'll blame them, which I never would anyway. I just want the basics. Just give me the basics. You know, so I'm saying to him a bleed of 3, etc., etc., and it's just he doesn't want to commit. Doesn't want to commit because he doesn't know the application. But to be honest, Affinity Publisher's fast taking market share from InDesign, so I don't think they're going to have much choice in the future. So I think things will only get better. But if you're in any doubt, just use the standard one. But they should just tell you. If you wade through all these pages, it'll be in there. Just download the whole lot of text and do a search for CMYK, and then whatever it says, use that. I do have a couple of special ones. They are CMYK, but in this particular job, the job was sent to Manchester United for printing, but Manchester United aren't printing it. Their reprographics department is not printing it. They're sending it to their printer. So it becomes like Chinese whispers. I say to their reprographics, what CMYK do you want? And it's not them actually printing it, so I never quite believe it anyway. So when I send it, I just use a standard one and then ask for feedback on it. But it's always printed out okay, isn't it? Mm. In terms of, one year they made a mock-up of the pages. Don't know how they managed that. It was so funny. There was this print job and about 80% of it was absolutely fine. And the other 80%, the pages were mixed up. And I'm like, how did they manage that? You know, if it's wrong, the whole thing's wrong. But no, it was only like a handful of brochures that were wrong. No idea how they managed that. But the CMYK part of it, that was fine. Oh, printing is a black art, isn't it? Okay. Oh, that's a good point, Carol. Amateurs using a lot of fonts. Also, they try to be quirky. Like if it's a barbecue poster that somebody's doing, which I have seen done. If they're doing a barbecue poster, you'll get like a picture of a barbecue, or more likely clip art of a barbecue, and then they'll use like a Wild West font, and it only goes downhill from there. So you're quite right, that is a very good point.
Are these the posters designed by a certain person you're thinking of?
Yes, they are, Mike. Ah. But let's not publicly shame them.
I wasn't going to. That's why I said a certain person.
Okay, let me get back up here. Ignacio says, am I the only one running Windows 10? I think we do have some Windows users. We do. Do I have any videos on BB Edit? No, I don't. But if you're on Windows 10, BB Edit is a Mac app. But there is another text application which is fantastic, which is Sublime Text, and that is cross-platform. The price of that today is $80. The price tomorrow is $100 because it's on sale. There's a brand new version. Let's go and have a look at that. Why are you not moving? That's better. So BB Edit actually processes text. Sublime Text, as you can see, I've got 2 versions installed. Where's Sublime Text gone? Okay. I've got 2 text files open in it, but that's Sublime Text. The features in this that are amazing is you've got this view over here. And it doesn't look like that's particularly exciting. But it is exciting when you've got a really long file. The other thing that this new one's got is I've got 2 shows here. I've got a Google Canvas one and the Notion API. So that was episode 129 and that was 130. And this is in Markdown to put in the mail and on the website. New feature is side-by-side comparison if I hold the shift key down. Oh, that's so cool. I love that. But I use a text editor for like processing something that I've created mainly. So if we get a new page and I take it out of the way and we go back to Scrivener and we look at the email, say. So let's look at the email for one of the announcement mails. One of these, that's quite short. Need a bigger one. There we go. So there's a mail with quite a bit of stuff in it, and it is a mail that. Let's fold this up so we can see it properly. That's a mail. But in Scrivener, you need to do magic to get it out of it. So what I would do is, I would compile that, which is this. So is it a MacBytes mail, Slide IQ, Excel Trainer, VIP, iBooks Author? Well, let's say it's a MacBytes mail, because this one actually was. So I just say to it, it's a MacBytes mail, and then I compile it. And it goes into my comms folder, but I'm going to put this in my data folder because I've already got that open. And you see it's got append a HTML extension, and then you can open that ready to edit it or something. So I'm not going to do any of that, but I'm just going to export it. And what I need to put that in the system is a text version of it. So when I export it, I don't want it to be anything fancy. It needs to be plain text. So if I go in here, should have the mail in there. Did I put it in there? Did I put it in data? There it is. Reminder. And you'll see it's exported, plain text, but it's put a HTML extension on it. And it's got this graphic. But if I open that, because I want to edit it, what it has actually written from Scrivener is acres of this. None of which you were looking at in Scrivener. All of this has been added with the export magic. There's pages of it, lines of it. So that's why over here, this view is so fantastic, because this is interactive. I can click on this and it will actually move it down. So everything from here, before you actually get to the heading, the first thing you see, there's 475 lines of code, which previously I had to put in by hand. Can you see why Scrivener's just amazing? And this view over here lets me scoot down to the content really quickly. I can see it in that preview. The other thing that we do, so obviously this would need much more of an explanation, but the short version of it is, in MacBytes what we do, let's get the last show, there's the last show. What I would do with that is open the whole thing up, and I want to create a mail. So what did we talk about? Well, I would pick everything from the welcome to the events. So the whole lot is selected. I would then do the export. So it looks like I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm going to create the show notes. So again, it needs to be, I can't remember now at this point, whether it's text or HTML. Is it plain text or is it HTML? I'm going to have to go and find out. That's the one thing I can never remember. So let's go in and find out what I need to do with it. Right, MacBytes, down here. Publishing. Right, so I'm sending out a MacBytes mail. What format does it need to be? Plain text. So up here it needs to be plain text. So I'm only taking out plain text. I'm showing you this for a reason. So I will compile that. And again, I'll put it in there. 137 recording notes. It's actually show notes. So let's put that there. And get it into this folder. Now what are you doing? Crying out loud. Come on, Scrivener, where have you gone? Don't fail me now. Right, let's go in there and export that. Now, was that for the mail? Let me have a look. You've disappeared again. Right. I'll do this properly in a proper demo, but I'll just show you at the moment why this is so amazing and why we use it. Oh, let's get down there. Right. This is the bit I want. Right. So it's plain text at this point, and I want everything except Siri. And I want that out as plain text. So that might actually work. So let's get these out of the way. And let me show you what we've actually got here and why I don't like doing it by hand. So over here we've got this, which is a text file. But this time, instead of opening it up in Sublime, I would open this up in BBEdit. And what I get is all of this. I'm wondering if that's actually right. We'll try it anyway. It could be, not sure. But what I've got in here is I've got some scripts to process it. So I can process the show notes. And it processes, and what I end up with is a text-based version of them and a HTML-based version of them. And I don't have to multiply the output of them at all, which is just so fantastic. The other thing with BBEdit is you can do a clear up, you can do tidy up text. So if you're processing text into Publisher, that might be incredibly useful. So we've got it down as a session that you'd like to see. So we will ponder that and see how we can fit that in. Okay, do we have a last call for questions? Any more questions?
No more questions.
CQ, Deb, CQ, Deb's in. Deb's in. Pete often gets sent artwork for the church magazine. It's supposed to be A6 PDF adverts, gets sent in at A4, a disaster. Tell me about it. And do you know the other one that's diabolical? Somebody will send in a photo that they want to put on a full A4 ad. And it'll be the size of a postage stamp. And about 2 DPI. Never mind 600 DPI. You end up having to redo it. There's no way you could just scale it. It's a nightmare. Oh, Carol likes pretty colours. Where were the pretty colours? Was this in Scrivener? Was it Scrivener's pretty colours? Oh, Scrivener is... Love Scrivener. Absolutely love Scrivener. Used it since it was before an alpha. They literally had this like embryonic thing and they put it out and said, you know, what do you reckon? It was like, oh, this is to die for. And then it went into alpha. And then it went into beta, I think. But this alpha one became known as Scrivener Gold. So it was totally free. Obviously, it was unsupported at that point because Scrivener was then released. But when I look at the price of Scrivener and what it does, honestly, I'd pay 10 times as much. In fact, just to support the guy, I did buy it twice. I bought it for, in fact, 4, yeah. Once on the Mac, once on Windows, once on iOS, and then I went back to the Mac and bought it in the App Store as well. Got to keep him going. Can't do without Scrivener, I'll tell you. So, yeah, it looks like a session on Scrivener is needed. So, any questions? Carol gets photos of pets to draw that are tiny and blurry. Do I have different requirements for BBEdit and Sublime? Yes, Carol. BBEdit has scripting in it. Now, you can probably do it in Sublime, but Sublime is far more manual to do it. So if I show you the preferences in Sublime, you'll get the idea. If we go into BBEdit, BBEdit is a fully fledged application that has been around since forever. So if you go into the preferences, they look like you would expect. Lots of preferences. Right, if I go into Sublime, you'll see how difficult it would be. That's the preferences. You've got these little bits over here that are your personal preferences, and then you've got these bits over here. But there's no preferences window, and that sums up Sublime Text to me. If you know what you're doing, awesome. If you don't, you'll break it, because you're actually editing the internal preferences on the left with no dialog box. But Sublime has this scroller here where you can see the entire file. So if I'm interested in that bit there, I can tell by looking at it, that's the bit I'm interested in. That is a fabulous way to do it. So I probably do work about given the text I work with, about 70% in Sublime and 30% in BB Edit. Another example of when I would use BB Edit would be, where would I get that from? Where would I get that from? No, I would have copied it out of there, wouldn't I? I know where I will get that from. All right, this is another example of something that BB Edit could do. So in Hindenburg, which is our audio editor, you're wondering where I'm going with this, aren't you? Next week we have a Rolling Stones special. So there is our Brooklands 196 Rolling Stones special. Over here, it's telling me what songs are in it. And I can right-click and copy as text. Because I want to put it in... Let's bring that on as well. Why don't we, while we're there? Do the whole thing right, woman. Right, over here we've got Brooklands. So let's get rid of the sidebar and make it smaller. Right, so I've got this show, which is actually, it's going into week 22, The Rolling Stones, and I've just realised I didn't do it. So I finished it, there's the show, but there's no playlist. I want to put these songs in as a playlist. And in Notion, that's a problem, because it does that, and it's hideous. So that's not good. If I go down there and do that, it's even worse. Crying out loud. So what I do with it is, I go into BB Edit, and I get a new file, and I paste that in. And then I do magic. I run a script on it. And once I copy that, and I go back into here, it's perfect. So it's scripted in BB Edit. So if I undo that, what I'm actually doing is going up here, and I have this process, which one is it? Process set list, which I run from a shortcut key. And it takes the copy of plain text that's in a terrible format from Hindenburg, and I just run it, copy it, then paste it into Notion. So I use BB Edit when I need to script it, basically. And it makes it a lot easier. So I actually managed to finish that. That's a real job. That's amazing. So I would say half the time, 60, 40, 70, 30, something like that. But each one has its strengths. Okay, let's get back into there. 2 DPI. Oh, you should see it. It's like, I wonder what that was supposed to be. They're terrible. Oh, Carol, when you're talking about this photo of the pets to draw and they're tiny and blurry, I got talking to this guy who was doing a demo, and somebody gave him this photograph. They were talking about taking things out of a photograph. So basically like repairing, but you know how people say, like, can you remove X? So this lady gave him this picture, and it was a bin. It was a wheelie bin. So they were outside a house. The woman stood there outside a house, and there's a wheelie bin next to her. And she says, can you get rid of the wheelie bin? So the guy looks at it and says, yeah, no problem. So he gets rid of the wheelie bin. So he did a good job on it. Comes back, presents the lady with the photo. And she looked disappointed. And he's thinking, you know, I don't know why you're disappointed. That was pretty good work. You know, it was a wheelie bin and it was quite big and I did well with it. So she said, oh, thank you. You know, and he said, you don't look happy with it. You know, is there something else that I can do with it? And she said, my cat was behind the bin and I was hoping that you know, I'd see the cat. Because the cat's long gone, and this was one of, you know, I was hoping there was a picture, you know, I could see the cat behind the bin because the cat's gone, and I thought the cat looked kind of cute, and she didn't understand that you couldn't just lift the bin and automatically the cat appear. Oh, fantastic time with Muggles. Brilliant. Oh, Carol needs to learn scripts. What would you be doing with them? What text would you be processing? Because scripting's not that difficult. In BB Edit, it's not that difficult. It's kind of a step-by-step process. What's going on here? Oh, you're very welcome, Ignacio. Do I drag the energy from devices, or do I just kill the devices? Well, I hope you have all enjoyed it. So you've heard that. We've got the commitment here. We have the commitment. So if you've got no more questions, I'm just going to move that on. And then we're back to that. I've made the commitment. Weekly updates in the email. So make sure that you're subscribed to the email. So the first thing we'll probably do is the project plan. And then we'll see how the bass line marries up in December, won't we? Do I actually need to sleep anymore? If I didn't need to sleep, I'd be fine. Be absolutely fine. 48 hours in a day, it would work well. Trust me on that, it would. But that's what I'll do. So the book will be with you in December. So a nice little stocking filler. Save your pennies up. Let's have a look here. Carol says, could I script to change base 64 code into readable text? You might be able to. How do you do it at the moment? The starting point for automating anything is to sit down and make a list of how you do it now. So what I was doing with that timings thing was I sat there and I thought, right, what do you do? And I thought I'd go to the first line and I put a 00 and a colon in. And then I move across and then I delete that and then I move to the end and then I move down. So if you literally, you can write code in English just by writing down what you do. And then all you need to do is to translate each step of that, because that's the process that you're already doing and you know it works. You just need to process each step of that into an automated script that does exactly the same thing. And that is exactly what I did. But I mean, I use that every time I make a music show for Brooklands, because it isn't I mean, you've got the audio there. You could whip through and listen to it. But it's far easier. Future you will thank current you if you put that playlist in now. For a couple of reasons. One, you'd know what songs were in it. The important one to know is what the first song is, because I always say, so let's start with, and then I say what the song is. But another reason is we've got a Queen special. We want another Queen special. What's my starting point? What songs were in the first Queen special? And the last thing I want to do is to have to listen to 90 minutes to write down what songs were in it. If I don't have access to the Hindi file that would tell me that, first off I'd have to find it. But if it's on another drive, it's not mounted or whatever, or it wasn't a show I did, I've got to sit and listen to it. So I do that. That's part of my project completion list. Make sure that I take those songs. Luckily, Hindenburg lets you copy it. If you're in an audio editor that doesn't, you can still do it. Don't think that you can't do it. But I take that and then process it, put it in there. I know exactly what that is. Also helps Mike. If he's thinking, oh, she did a Rolling Stone special, what songs were in it? How many songs were in it? Then he can just quickly glance at it in Notion and he's up to speed. Pseudocode. Yeah, just write it. Okay, do we have anything else? Carol just asked them to resend it. You are very welcome, Debbie. Debbie says, thank you so much, Elaine. Love the section on Mac colours and where to find them so I can back them up. That is one of the things, I think I was in the middle of a blog post about the 10 things that you don't back up on your Mac that you should. Now, luckily for me, my old computer sat behind me. But I actually have, let me just show you that. In relation to that, I actually have in here, documents local, we don't need that. Okay, all that. Right, in Dropbox, in my application support. So I've got Para enabled. The vault can't be moved, public needs to be in the root, and that is a Dropbox folder that can't be moved. That is where all the applications that specifically use Dropbox, system-wise, puts their data. Application support is my folder. That's where I put all the application support for the individual applications. And I also put in here colours, colour palettes. So there is a folder for Serenity, which is my old machine. When I go into that, there are all the colour palettes on that machine, including the plist that you saw me deploy today. And they're all backed up in a zip file as well. The next step, of course, is on a weekly basis to make sure that the current machine, which is called Mohawk, also has all of that. And because it's in the cloud, if I've done like a quick and dirty thing, which you shouldn't do, you know you shouldn't do it, but you do, you drag 5 colours for a client project you're working on into your colour wells at the bottom of that palette, and then you're out on the road with a laptop, and you think, I don't know what those colours were. They're on the machine back in the office. Then you've backed them up in here and you can just load those P-lists at will. Or nuke them when you finish with the thing. So put them, make a backup on like a weekly basis or even a daily basis. Put it in a cloud somewhere in a predictable place and future you will thank you. Also in here, do I have them in here? I don't think I put them in here. I think the scripts are in here, BB Edit. So they're actually pulling them from there. So all of my scripts and text filters and all the rest of it, there you go, process set list, show notes in HTML, show notes in text. They are all in Dropbox, so they're all available on any kind of machines at all. So it's just a matter of being organised, isn't it? But the more powerful the applications become, the more tricky it is to be organised. Because you've got an overwhelming range of options. But yes, we've probably got about 9 sessions that we could do there, couldn't we, getting you up to speed on all of that? Okay, right, I'm going to head off, unless there's any more questions. What was that one there? Is the program Sublime Text that I recommended the same that some use for HTML coding? Yes, it is. It's just a plain text editor. You can use it to edit whatever you want. So plain text, XML files, Markdown files, doesn't matter. There is a link. Let me see it. Let's get Vivaldi back. Where's Vivaldi disappeared to? Come on. Right, let's get a new page there. No, we don't want a new page. We want a new tab. That's what we want. New tab. Right. Sublime text. Right. I think it's probably going to be on the buy here. There you go. There's a limited offer. So if you've not already got it, it's usually $99, and this is for a 3-year update cycle. You can carry on using it after the 3 years, but you get updates for 3 years. It's usually $99, but at the moment, for 21 hours and 33 minutes, it's $80. So I did my upgrade yesterday, and I got my upgrade for $70, which was all its money for an upgrade, isn't it? When it's only $80 for a new license. But I did it yesterday. And I think it's a per person license, so if you've got more than one computer you can put it on there as well. I know that is quite a hefty cost for a text editor, but the thing is, you know, people live in that because of all it does. So if you're working a lot with text, that would be my preferred one, but BB Edit is where I create scripts. As I say, you can script in Sublime, but it's so manual. BB Edit makes it really nice, so that's why I do it in BB Edit. Okay. Absolutely last call, heading off now. Can I drag a CLR file from an external drive, copy it into the Gully folder? Yes. If you tried it, Debbie, and you thought it didn't work, you need to restart the apps. So you saw me when I was doing the Keynote thing, going in and out of Keynote. It feeds in, or pulls in, the information in that colours folder at the point that the app opens. So if you do something after that, it isn't reflected until you close it and open it again. So try that and let me know if that works. Okay, we are going to head off. We are finally going to head off. We are, absolutely we are. Okay, and to do that I need to get rid of all of this lot over here. So let's do that. And we will be back with you soon. But if you want to know how we're going with that project, and the first thing we need to do is the project plan, oh joy, make sure you're subscribed to elainegiles.com/VIP. And the channel, of course, and the channel. Okay, so we're heading off. So, thank you very much for being with us. Hope you found it useful. Hope you are excited for Mac Bites the iBook. Do let me know. We'll be going live again tonight at 7 o'clock, so that's an hour and a half, and I need to eat before I collapse. So, I'm going to say good afternoon from me.
And good night from me.
And we will both see you next time. Stay safe, guys.